Live or Memorex. All right.
It's
All
part
right,
of
ladies and
that,
gentlemen, good morning. We're going to get ready to do the pledge. I'm going to encourage everyone to mute themselves and try to keep the speakers speaking. The other thing I'd like to do is for
right, let me go back again.
my group, I would like to see that if you want to ask a question from the delegation, if you can use your raise your hand. I think we all know how to do that now. At this moment, I'd like to rise and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Note the little flag I got up for you. I'm ready. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I was going to ask if you could remain standing, if you are standing, and Senator Carrozza, could you join us, lead us in prayer?
Yes, I thought I would share my prayer from Inauguration Day, but gear it to the state of Maryland. Heavenly Father, please protect our state, our leaders, and the people of Maryland. Turn our state's hearts towards you, Holy Father, that we may put you first and obey your commandments. May we stand courageously and confidently in your most holy and precious word. We pray that we may acknowledge you always in our daily lives and glorify you with all that we do. And on this day that we are holding a special session to honor the passing of our former colleague, Senate President Emeritus Thomas V. Mike Miller, we ask Holy Father for special graces of comfort for Patty and all of his family. We say all of this in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you very much. Briefly, I want to just get the housekeeping out of the way. I need a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, perfect. Now we can start moving here. Okay. First on our agenda, I believe we have the Secretary of Commerce, Secretary Schultz. Is she with us yet?
I am. Good morning.
Hey.
Good morning. Thank you
Morning.
for coming.
Of course. No, happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, Kevin's on.
Let me just see. I think I lost my visual on you guys. Oh, there you are. Thanks for having me here today. I appreciate it. Hopefully everybody is doing well, and Happy New Year. I haven't seen faces in quite a while, so wanted to say Happy New Year and happy session in, I guess, a weird kind of way. But you all look as if you're doing well. So I won't take up a lot of time. I know that you have a busy agenda, but wanted to be able to provide some updates. I think that there is a slide presentation. I think somebody was going to put that on the screen. Is that?
Well, I don't know who's doing that. I thought you were going to share. You have the ability to share it. Do you have it with you?
I think my staff had said that they were going to send that in, but if we don't have that, then I will just go ahead and just give remarks, if that's okay.
Well, you know what, Madam Secretary, I believe I probably have it. I just have to find it and I can put it up, but you're going to have to help me through it to, which one was yours?
You're asking the wrong person to help you through it, Mr. Chair, but I'm going to try to help you through it. How's that?
Well, I got to find it first. I apologize.
Okay.
I'm trying to find your presentation. I know I put a couple up here. If that's it. I'm not sure which one it is, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, if you want, I'll try to get it. I'll find it and I'll try to put it up for you. Okay. And
you know what? I bet I can find it pretty easily. I'm just going to have to I'll see if I can share my screen. How's that?
That'll be fine. You can share your screen.
I just am not accustomed to doing that. So I apologize for the technical difficulties here.
We got Steve's emails up here.
Steve, I think you can just click on that PowerPoint that's up on the picture now.
It's kind of funny how the whole thing just went to Fluey.
Yeah, I know. I saw that, but you were right there, and it's just a matter of double clicking on that, and I think that would pull it up.
But what's happening right now, I'm hearing this meeting all over again, it seems.
Here it is.
Okay, whoever had that did it. So we're,
So can you guys see my screen?
I see Maryland Department of Commerce.
all right,
You
Yes.
do?
Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh, I did
And
it. This
it's
is a
the
great
deck.
celebration.
It's the whole deck, Kelly. You're good.
I have no idea how I just did that. So let's just move forward, shall we?
we should, but let me just say, I'm reliving this meeting as we're doing it. My screen's in a reboot here.
Okay, well, there you go. Let's just see what we can do. Now I can't really see my talking points. So that's okay, because I don't have, multiple screens on here. So this is what I'm going to tell you. You guys wanted an update on a couple of things. You guys wanted to know where we stood with the COVID relief funds right now and where we're moving forward to. And I'm happy to be able to share all of this information with you. The screen that you should see right now, I'm hoping, is showing basically what we have done thus far with our COVID relief. You do know that there's more than $220 million that have come out just of the Department of Commerce between grants and loans, with the total number of individuals that are that have been helped by what we have put forward. You also know that $74 million about that went to the loan program, and that program, as the governor had stated in December, has been converted to grants. So that was the loan forgiveness for those individuals. A really important part of the project that we had at the very beginning of the pandemic was to be able to assist the PPE efforts and working with our local manufacturers. So putting $5 million into that to be able to provide grants to manufacturers to quickly shift. And I think we're going to see the benefit of that moving forward. I'll just say that the manufacturing industry in general is still continuing to increase and grow, unlike some other parts of the state. So that's a program that we take a lot of pride in. And the arts funding, and for those of you that are really engaged in your arts communities on the Eastern Shore, will know that the arts community was very, very thankful for getting additional help in funding through the course of COVID. Then we, in our last two rounds of funding, we provided $5 million each time to the Maryland Small Business Development Fund. That's Ms. BIDFA, as we commonly know it at the Department of Commerce. So I wanted to be able to make sure that you knew that those funds for those smallest of businesses that have difficulty getting any type of funding through traditional means, we have $10 million of our COVID relief put there. And then our most recent actions were to put out to the local jurisdictions, to the counties, restaurant relief funds. And we started with $50 million, and those funds were divided proportionally amongst all of the jurisdictions to be able to make sure that the number of businesses was proportionate to the amount of funding that was given. There was a second round of funding, so the total amount of funds for the restaurants are $80 million, and the counties are doing a wonderful job distributing those throughout the state. They have a timeline of March 31st in order to be able to distribute those funds. And then at the same time that they got additional funds for restaurants, the governor chose to provide $50 million for hotel relief. And those dollars are getting out to the counties. Not all of the counties, I believe most of them on the Eastern Shore have, but not all of the counties have returned their signed grant agreements. So we continue to follow up with them to be able to make sure that they have the funds moving forward. For you specifically on the Eastern Shore, you should note that Worcester County has asked us to extend one of the eligibility requirements, which was that the hotels would need to be opened by March in order to be able to receive the funds, understanding the tourism industry and the hotel industry specifically in Worcester County, we have agreed that they can make their eligibility for May 1st as opposed to March 1st for their reopening status. So they had sent that request to us. I'm going to go on to the next slide. Just as historical references are concerned, this is the page that we had put up at the very beginning, and we started with our advisory groups to be able to make sure that the guidance for the business community was very readily available. So with our 13 advisory groups, we began working with the Department of Health and the Maryland State Police on issuing guidance specifically. And this is updated continuously. So as we moved through what was, the shutdown process, and then as we started to reopen in different ways in order to be able to provide best practices, this has been a great benefit to the community. And we've heard lots of great things about that. And another thing we've worked very closely with multiple sister agencies on is to be able to get out that public service announcement type of responses when it comes to our Masks on Maryland campaign. And so multiple agencies have done something similar, but we've tried to streamline it in order to be able to make sure that everybody knows that we're all in this together. And of course, it's not just about wearing masks. We do put out throughout social media and other avenues about the other important factors of staying healthy, which would be, washing your hands, social distancing, smaller gatherings, etc. So where are we right now with Maryland's economy? We're better than most states, thankfully. Our employment numbers are growing. Our unemployment numbers are decreasing. We had a 6% unemployment rate in November and a 5.5% unemployment rate in December. We have the fastest growing healthcare sector in the nation. As I stated earlier, some of our industries are obviously doing better than others. We continue to see the accommodations, hospitality industry, that is obviously where we're struggling the most and may have a big impact on the Eastern Shore. But we do see employment growth in areas like manufacturing, like I said, healthcare, and retail is picking up, as you know. Logistics is in transportation is doing a wonderful job, and we continue to expand and grow in the opportunities across the state. So other things that we've been doing, I think we had discussed at one point in time, the difference, slight difference in the mission that we had at the Department of Commerce, probably between March and I would say July or August, when we were very busy trying to get out the grants and loans with the new systems that we had put into place. And we obviously saw some decrease in the amount of economic development, of course, that was happening across the state, but things have picked up. And our team is really busy getting back to business as usual with the attraction of new companies, creating more jobs, expansion of companies here in the state. I want to point out the last bullet point here about our attraction team. So we do have several areas of attraction that has been very interesting. You all know that we passed the data center tax credit bill last year, and the governor signed it into law in May. So thank you all very much. I know Senator Hershey was integral in helping to put that through the Senate over the course of a couple years. So we automatically, instantly started receiving phone calls from large data centers from across the country and even across the globe in order to be able to come to Maryland. So that's a decent size of it. But we have over 50 active attraction expansion projects in the state going on right now. Of course, I can't talk about them because they're but they are representative of more than 16,000 total new jobs in Maryland. So getting back to normal means that we're able to do the type of consultation and working with those different types of site selectors and those companies that are looking for various opportunities across the state. And you'll also see on this page some of the other fun activities that have been happening, some right in your jurisdiction. So I want to move on just to talk a little bit. As you know, the Governor's Relief Act of 2021 was introduced in the Senate and the House on Wednesday, and we're really excited about this this piece of legislation. Just very briefly on where we are with that right now. I know Secretary Robinson has a big role in this as well. Between the Department of Commerce and the Department of Labor, we're working on really gaining a lot of momentum and support for this piece of legislation. So it's in addition to the over $700 million of relief that we've had thus far going into COVID. This is an additional $1 billion in emergency stimulus and tax relief. Direct payments to over 400,000 Marylanders. And of course, that is directly tied to the earned income tax credit. So if this bill passes, they would immediately get support through that. Up to 4 months of sales tax credit for small businesses. So small businesses that are currently collecting taxes and have, I believe it's less than a $1 million gross annual revenue, are able to keep up to 4 months. 4 months of up to $12,000 worth of tax relief. And I'm happy to forward this information to you in the slide for anyone in the delegation that doesn't have it. And we do have a one-pager on this as well that we've worked with the governor's office that goes into a little bit more detail in advance of our hearing, which is next week. No sudden unemployment tax hikes, and I know that many of your businesses are going to be excited about that with the rate of the unemployment insurance to increase. And then along with that, at the Department of Labor, no state and local income taxes on those unemployment benefits. And I think our constituents that have been unemployed have also been very concerned about that. And then with the emergency grants and loans that were distributed by the Department of Commerce, the state will not use that as revenues to increase their taxes for their relief that they had received. So this brings the overall economic development relief for both employers and employees to over $1.7 billion thus far. And I do believe actually that because this was it's stated as an emergency bill, as soon as the House and the Senate vote on it, and it seems as if we have good cooperation from the Senate President, that once the governor signs it, it will go into effect immediately. And I'm just very briefly going to touch on a few of our pieces of legislation that we're going to be presenting to Budget and Tax Committee on Thursday, on the 27th. And there are 4 bills that really kind of go into some alterations of our current tax credit programs for specific industries. And for those of you that had paid attention over the last couple of years, many legislators have had some concern about the efficiency and the effectiveness of our tax credit programs. So we wanted to be proactive this year, and our research team and our finance programs really over the course of the past 2 years have really dug in and worked with our stakeholders to see what could really happen in order to be able to streamline our existing programs and make them better so that more businesses can participate and get those types of tax credits that are going to be meaningful to grow those certain industries. We do have a one-pager on all of these as well. I'm certainly happy to answer any of your questions on them, but I did not want to take up all of the time with this presentation. And thank you for giving me a little bit of slack at the beginning of the presentation. I appreciate that.
All right, well, thank you. If we want to stop sharing the screen, that would be great. I can do that, but if you want to pull it down. Do I have anybody here with questions? I see Johnny Mounts, Delegate Mounts, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Johnny Mounts, you got it. Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Chairman. And Secretary Schultz, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here with us. Thanks for everything that you've been fighting through this year. It's been a tough year. And thank you for the presentation. I've got just a question and two issues. One that is stifling a lot of small businesses and individuals right now, and it's directly affecting commerce, is the failure of the U.S. Postal Service to deliver mail on a regular basis and a timely basis. It's created havoc in the small business community. It's created havoc for individuals. It's a crisis. And I believe there's effort, a way to try to lend some public support. And I just encourage you to bring this to the governor's attention. I don't think many people are aware of how many problems that the failures of the Postal Service is creating throughout the business community. and throughout individuals' personal activities. But my question to you is, what can we do to advocate a change in the regulation for the operation of food and beverage service, which is cut off right now at 10 p.m.? What can we advocate to have that extended to 12 a.m.? There are a number of businesses. This is a significant reduction in income, and we're doing these things to try to help these small businesses. And many of them see this 2-hour window as being arbitrary and also hurting their ability to try to generate income when it's in their business hours. It's one of the times where they can generate some income to try to get through this tough winter.
Well, thank you, Delegate. I would say the advocacy groups are out in full swing. I have had several conversations with them over the course of the last couple weeks. We are in constant communication with the Restaurant Association. And I would say, as we continue to move forward with getting the vaccinations more broadly spread and look at the hospital rates, I think that there's probably going to be some leniency when it comes to that. I just don't have a specific time for you on that. But I do continue, if anybody sends me documentation, I know that I received documentation from a group at the end of last week that talked about maybe not so much bars, but more of the fine dining restaurants. And they gave me an accounting of the people that really do fine dining after 9 o'clock at night when they would typically make their reservations. And it becomes very difficult to be able to manage those late night hours and the loss of revenues and profits through that.
Yeah, and I'll get some information to you, but I think it's pretty well established, the shutdown versus the non-shutdown model and the rate of transmission. There really isn't a whole lot of disparity. I think the comparison was Florida versus California. Whether they're operating at 9 a.m. or 10:30 p.m. as far as transmission and safety, there really isn't any much difference. And when you cap off business at 10 p.m., just so everybody understands, that means the service actually stops at 9 p.m. So when that person comes in for a dinner at 9 o'clock and they order a $300 bottle of wine, they're being forced to vacate it at 10. And it really is it sounds like it's keeping people safe, but it really isn't changing behavior or exposure from one person to the next. I don't want to steal all your time. I wanted to share some of those thoughts with you. Thank you so much for being with us. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Delegate. And of course, anything that comes to my office, we certainly share with the governor's office and his staff and make sure that we are the advocate for those businesses that need an advocate. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other questions for the Secretary? Yes, I have Delegate Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, it's kind of piggyback off of Delegate Mounts. I've heard from restaurants as well. Just not only, the whole purpose of us closing them and picking a time was for social distancing. Now, if they're allowed to stay open longer, then the social distancing can actually be further apart, because then you're not cramming everybody in to one establishment for a shorter amount of time. So, just think about that as well. That would be, I think, an argument to add an hour or two to allow them to stay open.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate.
All right, I'm looking for any other hands raised. Is there anybody else who would like to have a conversation? All right. I'm actually seeing none, Secretary. I can tell you we appreciate you coming. Always enjoy your message, and you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you all. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
I think we're on track right now to have Secretary Robinson. Is she in? And do you have your presentation?
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you.
Great. I actually have my policy director, Michael Harrison, on as well. And I think he's going to share the screen to put my presentation up. Can you do that for me, Michael? Perfect.
You know how good it is to have this happen this week. Last week, I was able to change the slides for everybody. So it's a good thing for me. Thank you.
Well, I was actually going to attempt to do it myself, and Michael texted and said, "Would you like me to share?" And I said, "Yes, please." That's everything easier, doesn't it? If someone else can do that part. So thank you to Michael. We can go ahead and move right through. I'm not going to explain every single slide. These are just some of the things I'm going to touch on are some claim volume and statistics, and I'm going to share a little bit about the new programs that were just passed that we implemented. And then, of course, I'll touch on the labor part of the Governor's Relief Act. So, Michael, if you want to scroll on through. These are just some highlights, some big numbers I wanted to kind of start off with to put things in perspective. We have received over 1.4 million new claims since March. We have paid over $9 billion in state and federal benefits. So that number always jumps out to me because when I know that there are people complaining, but there is a lot of good that has happened through this program, and no other state agency or program has paid this much money to our citizens during this crisis. So we are thrilled to have processed, over 95% of our claims and paid over $9 billion in benefits to our customers. Those include the claimants filing over 19 million weekly claim certifications. Our adjudicators behind the scenes have resolved over 2.1 million claim issues. You might have heard me talking early on about the fact that when an issue arises on a claim, oftentimes there's more than one issue. Those issues can relate to separation. The employer might dispute that they left their job voluntarily or that they were fired for misconduct. There might be a pension or a severance issue. There might be a fraud issue. Oftentimes claims have more than one issue that need to be resolved behind the scenes before it can get paid under the law. We've also implemented 9 brand new federal programs last year and this year. We have added over 900 new unemployment insurance employees, and we continue to add. Our virtual agent has conducted nearly 2.6 million conversations. And on a very positive note, we've averted nearly 6,000 layoffs through our work sharing program and saved over 21,000 jobs through our $30 million layoff aversion fund. So I won't go into those details any more than that, but this slide gives you a really clear picture of what has happened during this pandemic. You can see from last April or through April of 2020, the spike that happened when the pandemic hit in our claim volume. And I wish this went out all the way until today in January, because unfortunately this past week, we were back up at over 41,000 new claims, brand new claims. So our chart would be right up in the middle of that peak again, which means we continue to plow forward because the crisis is not over in terms of what we're seeing from our customers just yet. The only other thing I'll highlight on this screen is the last bullet, to further put things in perspective. Back during the Great Recession, the peak number of claims received in a week was 6,000 claims. We had 3 weeks during this pandemic where we received over 100,000 claims. And as of last week, we're back up at around 41,000 claims. So we have lots of challenges, but I will be completely honest and frank with you that the volume is the biggest challenge that we continue to deal with. In terms of staffing changes, I get questions all the time. So I really wanted to make sure everyone understands what we are doing. The federal government funds unemployment insurance programs across the state under what's called a resource justification model, an RJM. It is flawed, in my opinion, and outdated. It hasn't been revised in decades, and it needs to be revised. We have written to USDOL and our delegation and have asked them to work on that, and we hope that that happens in the coming months. This is also an initiative coming from our national organization of state workforce agencies. I speak with my counterparts every week because we're the only ones kind of that truly understand the crisis that is facing unemployment insurance across the country, from the funding levels to the rules and the ever-changing programs. It's been very difficult. But when we're funded based on workload, that means that when the pandemic hit, unemployment rates had been low for a decade. So we were funded at very low levels, which meant our capacity and our staffing was at extremely low levels. And I'm sure that all of you know how difficult it is to staff up to a capacity to handle, let's see, we went from 1,500 claims to 100,000 claims in a week. That's a 5,000% increase. Even for the private sector, that's really hard to handle. So it's been hard to handle as a state agency, especially with procurement rules and difficulties in getting vendors on board quickly, which we have done, by the way. So the next point that I wanted to make is we currently have 2 vendors. Oops, Michael, if you can back up just for a second. I wanted to highlight Accenture and Alorica. Accenture is our call center vendor, and we currently have 675 call center agents available, and we continue to add those agents as quickly as the vendor can recruit and train them. We have 150 adjudicators on board at this point through Alorica. That's a more complex training. There's a little bit more of a learning curve because they are the ones doing the investigation and fact-finding interviews and collecting of documents from multiple employers to resolve those very difficult pending disputed claims. We continue to add those adjudicators at no less than 25 per week under our contract. And really that's based on the competitive nature of unemployment insurance across the country. Every single vendor is recruiting to do the same thing for every single state. And I wanted to remind you of one point that we haven't publicized much, but it's something that we've also asked of our federal delegation to help us work on. The USDOL required pre-pandemic for anyone making a decision in an unemployment insurance case to be a merit staff member. They had to be a state pinned employee. Thankfully, under the CARES Act, we were given flexibility to work with vendors and have additional people come in, go through a expedited, virtual training and share with them our state rules, which are different than every other state's rules, and have them help us make those decisions and work through our volume and our backlog. That flexibility was to expire on December 31st. In the new act, it was continued only through March. So as of March, we're asking for another extension because as of March, all of these vendor employees that we have on board helping us to work through our backlog will no longer be able to make those decisions under the federal laws. So it's just one additional challenge we're working through. We hope that they are going to extend that once again through the pandemic so that every state in the nation can continue to do this work as quickly as we possibly can. I won't really talk about the additional call center hours. I think everyone knows we're taking calls 7 days a week at this point for 4 hours on Saturday and Sunday, every single week now. We have our call center agents available even on holidays. And we've hired 100 new merit staff in the department. The difficulty there, I have been asked many times as well, do you need additional funding for internal capacity? The problem is that when the pandemic is over, I won't have the volume or the level of work for a permanent employee to do. So there's all kinds of ideas about training programs and creating a national adjudicator stockpile that states can pull upon if this situation were to ever rise again. I'm happy to share those ideas with you and talk with you offline about what our national organization is pushing for at the federal level. But I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of where our staffing levels were, make sure you know that I have not stopped staffing up. We just continue to hire as quickly as we can onboard them. All of the new employees require internal support. So that's a little bit of a challenge as well. New agents on the phone, new agents doing adjudications, constantly have multiple questions for our internal experts in the programs because unemployment insurance is extremely complex. So we can only do so much so quickly, but I'm pushing, pushing full speed ahead with all hands on deck. So let's go ahead, Michael, and I'll kind of swing through the rest of the slides. Just a reminder that we have a lot of fraud in the system. This is not a Maryland problem, it's a nationwide problem. We know I'm on the phone weekly with our state police who's working with our federal partners very closely because oftentimes these are out of the country bad actors that are getting access to personally identifiable information and filing claims using people's social security numbers, names, addresses. So we have multiple metrics in place to flag these and block them as quickly as possible. I'll just point out that over 84% of the claims that we are flagging for fraud turn out to truly be fraudulent. That's 90% of out-of-state claims and 79% of in-state claims. So we do know that some claimants get caught up waiting for a manual fraud review of documents when we ask them to verify their identity through one of these flags. We're working through those as quickly as possible. And we just closed another RFP to bring on a vendor to help us do that more rapidly and more kind of electronically through the system, so it doesn't always require so much manual review. Let's move to the next slide. This just creates a picture for you of our current stats. As I mentioned, over 9 billion benefits paid, 95% processed, 80% of those claims have been paid, 14% have been denied, and 5% are pending. The 5% of claimants we hear from often. We are, I'm going to talk at the very end about something new I'm doing internally to try and relieve some of the pressure and volume from legislators during session while you're so busy. But we did receive over 41,000 brand new claims last week. So the pie chart kind of is a good picture of what's happening across the nation. Most states pictures look a little bit like this. We actually pay more claims than deny more claims in other states, simply because our laws are set up to require my agency to work really, really hard to do everything in our power to try and get a claimant their benefits, to try and get them paid, as opposed to denying and pushing them through the appeals process. That takes time and resources, but that's what we're doing. This slide, I won't go into in detail. It really just breaks out the funding that we have paid out by, you can see it's almost equal between regular unemployment insurance and the pandemic unemployment program, which is the self-employed and independent contractors. You can keep going, Michael. And this is a little bit more jurisdiction specific information for you. Of the 1.4 million claims that have been filed since March, 68,541 of them are from your region. And that is, that matches up with your population to the state. So I don't think there should be any surprises. We report all of these numbers on our website every week. But if anyone would like us to drill down, I'm not sure how many of you follow our stats on our website, but in addition to the claim volume by county, we also publish lots of charts related to industry-based claims. And in the past few weeks, we have seen more claims in the jurisdictions that have issued orders to limit indoor dining. Baltimore City, Prince George's County, and Arundel, we saw those claims spike, which is not surprising because we had a lot of restaurant workers coming back. They had gone back to work and they were coming back into the system to extend or reopen their claim. You can go on, Michael. This is, I wanted to just remind everyone that on December 27th, the Continued Assistance for Unemployed Workers Act was passed. This is the extension program to the CARES Act for unemployment insurance, and allowed us to extend PUA, PEUC, the FPUC. You may remember back in the summer, the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation Program, that's what we call FPUC, included $600 additional weekly payment on top of everyone's benefits. This extended program is very similar, but it adds $300 instead of $600. So as you can imagine, I'm sorry that this coincides with the first couple weeks of session, but our volume is rising again, and our call volume is rising again, because as you can imagine, customers want to reopen and extend their claims for the additional 11 weeks that's being offered. And if they are eligible, they obviously want to benefit from that extra $300 a week. So we're hearing from a lot of people just trying to make sure that they've done everything right and that their claim is being processed appropriately. I will say, we've talked a lot in the past about our new beacon system that we were kind of required to launch back in September. That project is a major IT project that had been in the works since 2015. Actually, the previous administration started the procurement for that project. And Secretary Schultz, had the benefit of working in the first stages of that project. It was 100% federally funded, $70 million to modernize an entire unemployment insurance system over 5 years. We never intended to have to launch it in the midst of a pandemic, but that is exactly what we did. We did that for a couple reasons. We had a liquidation deadline with USDOL of September 30th. We asked, I could say we begged for an extension simply because we wished to have a little more time to do testing because we were obviously overwhelmed due to the pandemic. We did not get that extension granted, so we were forced to launch the program. That being said, we tested day and night, 24 hours a day for weekends on end leading up to that date. And we knew that if we could get it moving, we knew that it would be a benefit to our customers because it's really difficult. And some of the states in the nation that still have not launched some of these new extended programs. I was on a call yesterday with my counterparts. There are several states that are still not offering the extra 300. They're not offering the reopened claim availability for PUA yet because they're working in an old legacy system, or they were doing what we were trying to do, which was a balance, walking a tightrope between two systems, which becomes extremely complex, especially with the enhanced volume. So because of Beacon 2.0, we were able to be one of the first states in the nation. There's a little bit of an argument about whether we're the actual first state. I'm working that out with my counterparts across the country, but we believe we were the first state in the nation to program and implement these 3 new extended programs so that our customers did not have any gap in benefit eligibility or payments. So that was a big deal, and that was due to the fact that we have the new system in place. So for that, I'm grateful, and I know our customers are grateful for that as well. Michael, you want to move to the next slide? I'm not going to go into all the details, but I wanted to provide you these slides with the details of these new extended programs. They each extend for 11 weeks. Essentially. And Michael, if you want to go to the next slide, the only one I did want to point out was the only program that was launched in the new Continued Assistance Act that we have not implemented yet is the last one on this screen, the Mixed Earner Unemployment Compensation Program. No state in the nation has launched this program. We are all waiting for additional guidance from USDOL. They still haven't issued all the rules to us for this particular program. It is extremely complex. It is intended for regular unemployment insurance claimants who also have self-employment or independent contractor income. And for any claimant that can prove to the state that they have at least $5,000 in additional self-employment income, they can become eligible under MEUC for an additional $100 in federal compensation on top of their regular state unemployment benefits. There are a lot of tax documents required. And as I mentioned, I get a lot of questions on this, and we asked some questions earlier this week to USDOL about this program. And the answer that we continue to get is that's still being worked out, and that will be included in the coming guidance. So that's about all I can share with you. But as soon as we have the rules, we will implement that as quickly as possible. I also wanted to touch on briefly, Kelly did a great job of kind of giving you the overarching summary of the Governor's Relief Act, that there are some important unemployment insurance related aspects to this act. And so I wanted to point that out. Most importantly, this act repeals all state income taxes on unemployment insurance benefits for calendar year 2020 and beyond. So what that means, we are currently required, my division is required by law to offer to our claimants the option to have taxes withheld in fully or partially or not at all from their benefits as we pay them. And weekly we send payments on that withholding to the comptroller's office. So this does not affect their federal tax, but this completely repeals their state tax. What that means is for all of our claimants who requested to have those taxes withheld in this past year of 2020, when they file their tax returns, they will get a refund in 2020. So that's a huge benefit to them this year. And then of course we will be, if this passes, we will immediately reprogram our system to take away the requirement for that withholding election for state taxes. In addition, I think everyone may remember the governor issued an executive order back in December to provide tax relief for small businesses by essentially waiving the pandemic charging of layoffs to employers during this difficult time when oftentimes the layoffs were due to no fault of their own if they were closed. We were thrilled to find that this executive order is being codified in the Relief Act, and it also kind of extends it by a year. So the executive order allowed the waiving of charges for fiscal year 2020, and the act allows the waiving of charges for fiscal year 2021. So our businesses will, and Michael, you can go to the next slide because I think it further explains kind of the calculation of the experience rating waiver in the executive order and in legislation. It essentially allows an employer to enjoy the experience rating pre-pandemic and not be penalized by any layoffs from fiscal year 2020 and 21. So that's a really big deal for our employers. That being said, I do want to be clear. I wish I could paint a really rosy picture, but we are in an emergency, and I think everyone understands at this point that our employers are moving from table A to table F in terms of their tax rate. So they will have a higher tax rate. That the last time we were in table F was back during the Great Recession, and as you saw from our claim volume, it's much higher now than it ever was then. So yes, we're going to be in table F for this year and for many years going forward. However, their experience rating charge within the table can be more or less based on layoffs, and they will not be charged for the layoffs during this emergency. So that charge that they get within the table will be lesser than it would have been without the order or without this legislation. Happy to explain that further offline. It's a little bit complex. I know our small businesses appreciate it. This was back in the fall a request of the Maryland Chamber and NFIB, and we worked with them to get the executive order issued and codify it now, hopefully, as you pass the Governor's Relief Act of 2021. So with that, I want to just close out. There are several more slides that I know, Mr. Chair, we have provided to you, so please feel free to share with the group. I wanted everyone to have the employer call center number because the employer call center is new. And all of our resources in terms of FAQs and tutorials. More importantly, though, I wanted to just remind you that if there were a simple solution to this problem we're facing in unemployment insurance, I can assure you I would have implemented it by now. I have consistently, worked with stakeholders, and I was on the phone, this week with Senator Klausmeier and Delegate Carey, who chaired the Unemployment Insurance Oversight Committee. We have offered to provide feedback and assistance on any legislation that may come through to try to streamline and improve the process in the Unemployment Insurance Division. And that being said, I'm going to share something that I will not probably say publicly, but because it is the legislative session and I know how busy you are, and I know that sometimes our internal learning curve with new agents, they're working on claims and updating the beacon system, but they don't always make it over into our new CRM tool through Salesforce and get all the updates in so that you can see them in real time. I am making a huge push internally to do some restructuring and add additional agents to focus solely on Salesforce and on constituent claims coming from your offices. We know it's a busy time for you. The reason I say I'm not going to publicize the type of restructuring I'm doing is because I think you all know by now, the minute that our customers find out that legislative claims or governor's office claims or Facebook claims are being processed more quickly or getting higher level of attention, they all then funnel that direction. So I'm trying to avoid having every single customer in the system funnel through their legislator office and make your lives more difficult. But I want to do everything in my power to handle our own customers So we are pulling resources in terms of a team effort from our vendor, our vendor meaning Sagitech, our beacon vendor, to resolve any technical issues, our adjudicators, our call centers, our internal UI professionals. We're having a weekly call to kick this off last week, and we're having a weekly call regularly going forward to push through. And I believe you will start seeing some progress. Our agents are now going to start acting like case managers, essentially, for legislative constituent claims, and providing some reassurance and touch points, reaching out directly instead of waiting for them to call us back to give them updates as to what's happening on their claim. While on the back end, we try to resolve some of those really difficult issues and bring that claim to closure and completion. So with that, again, I would ask that you allow me to do that internally and see that progress organically so as not to create a bigger problem for you. But with that, I want to stop and take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I think first up we have Delegate Adams.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's a pleasure to be here this morning with you, Secretary Robinson, the work that you're doing, some of the most challenging work that we have going on in the state right now. And I applaud you and would rally, and as I'm sure the delegation would rally behind you and your organization, your department, as you're trying to help citizens. I think it's important to note, and I'd ask the question, unemployment insurance is nothing more, nothing less than an insurance program that's backed up with a UI trust fund. And if we had a draw on any kind of insurance, health insurance or private business insurance, the kind of draw that you've had, it would cripple any system. And I thought I would just ask you, does it feel like unemployment insurance was completely not built for what we've experienced right now?
You couldn't be more accurate. And that's the conversation kind of we're having at a national level with our organization and my counterparts across the country, because we do hope that there are going to be changes at the federal level to finally make some, reforms in the funding model and in the process. All of our states, while every state has its individual unemployment insurance laws, they must remain in conformity with federal law. Or else we lose the federal tax credit for our employers, which is a really big deal. So thank you for mentioning that. It absolutely is an insurance program, and a complex one, to say the least, with overlapping federal and state rules and regulations. So as we move forward, I hope that, honestly, the last time that the federal government infused grant money into state trust funds was during the Great Recession. I hope to see that coming. We know that they are discussing it. We have certainly made the request on multiple occasions. That would absolutely help. But there's more reform in this program than is needed than just that going forward. So we're, at Maryland Department of Labor, we're trying to get through this crisis and help our customers. But on the periphery, we're also looking at the bigger picture and trying to make sure we're never in a position like this again.
There's no doubt that you're doing everything you can within your power to make things, better. I would just add and sort of close by saying that, the Federal Emergency Management Administration, FEMA, I look at what happened in our country over the past year as nothing more, nothing less than a national disaster, as if a hurricane swept the entire country at one time. And it, watching your department take what was almost an impossible situation and try to help people without it crippling our system. This could have absolutely crippled our ability to deliver any resources is admirable. And I'll just close, Mr. Chairman, by saying that I know myself and everybody in the delegation rallies behind you, supports you. These calls that we take in our district offices are not done because it's an obligation, but rather it's a delivery of customer service and helping people get a chance to listen to a real person, hear their concerns, and voice their issues. And so we're here and have been. I'm sure all of us would say here to help and support you. And just want to thank you for everything you've done. I know it's been difficult.
Thank you, Delegate. I have to just say, I can't tell you what it means to hear that I have your support. I know the system is not perfect. I know we have a lot of work to do. I'm not giving up. I haven't had a vacation in 9 months, but that's nice to hear. So thank you. I will keep working hard.
Good job. Okay, next we have Delegate Kevin Bailey Hornberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Madam Secretary, I just wanted to again echo that we've had some particularly thorny issues with constituents, and your office has been able to assist and get the benefits that they so badly need. We even had one where there was a federal nexus, and the Fed claimed that the Social Security number associated with that individual was deceased. And a 17-year-old young man that was just trying to get his unemployment. So I really want to thank you. These updates that you shared with us are really important, and they're new information to me. My question is there a way to push out maybe to us, and then we could push out on our social media or email blast, et cetera, when these updates come along? This seems to be an ever evolving process, and a lot of the constituency is just kind of out there. They don't have these resources. They don't know about this. Is there a way that we can take that information and maybe it's a few sentences or a paragraph and be able to retweet or repush that back out to folks? So we're getting this message across, because it is super important. And some of this was new to me today.
That's a really good point, Delegate. Thank you for mentioning that. I started this pandemic in the Department of Labor with a communications team of one person. I have an assistant for her at this point, and we have rallied and hired additional people kind of in the Secretary's office to be liaisons and service our communications legislative UI team. So we have someone monitoring and trying to push out important positive message and updates directly to claimants on Facebook. We've found that that's really helpful for them to be, because they have their own unemployment insurance groups and then they share those messages. But being able to do that through your resources as well, I think could be really helpful. So I'm happy to, I would love to have my communications team kind of maybe put together some brief messages and updates that we could share with the delegations so that you could share with your constituents.
Yeah, and I can't speak for Mr. Chair, but I'm sure that all the members here could push that out too to our districts and get that information out there, because it's just changing so quickly. And in closing, again, thank you for your efforts. It does not go unrecognized with this group.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Senator Steve Hershey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Secretary, thanks again for your comments. I want to follow up a little bit about what Delegate Adams spoke about with respect to the UI fund. I think this whole pandemic has really shined a light on a fundamental issue I've always had with this, is that this is a support system set up to benefit the employees, yet it's paid for by the employers. And we've now seen that overall, not just in Maryland, but this system has failed. That there simply is, as Delegate Adams mentioned, this is an insurance fund. Employers have been paying their benefits into this fund, and at the time when it's needed, the fund wasn't available to handle, again, what was necessary because of a pandemic. And now the employers have to go back and pay even more money to go back to make the fund solvent again. You had mentioned several times that you've asked the federal government for grants. You mentioned again today that is, I guess, still pending. Can you just talk about what is the magnitude of deficiency in the fund so that people understand what that number is? And then my question would be, the governor just announced his $1 billion relief package. Could the governor, within that relief package, fund the UI or put revenues into the UI fund to make that solvent?
Thank you, Senator. There was a lot of questions there, but I will start with saying certainly, especially if there were, and I hope there is going to be, additional federal money coming our state's way. Obviously, a direct grant to our trust fund would be ideal. But even if there is an additional funding, like CARES Act funding that came to states, in the summer, that type of funding could certainly be utilized to help fill some of the gap in our trust fund. It is a difficult situation. I will remind you that our employers enjoyed the lowest tax rating under Table A for the last decade in Maryland. That was a big deal, and we had the lowest unemployment rates. However, the way our laws are set up, that did fund our trust fund at lower levels than than maybe was necessary for in an emergency situation like this. In terms of the health of our trust fund right now, I can tell you we have tried extremely hard to be fiscally responsible and be good fiduciaries of that trust fund by utilizing all USDOL grant funding and supplemental budget request funding for everything that could be funneled into benefits. And for example, the federal government under the CARES Act allowed us to use federal money to pay the first compensable week of benefits, even for regular UI, through December 31st. That did not get continued in the Continued Assistance Act. But we pulled a ton of money from the federal treasury to do that. We in Maryland also have one of the lower taxable wage base rates. We do not want to change that. At this time of an emergency, the last thing we want to do, obviously, is increase any burden or taxes for our employers, which is why we're working on this experience rating model. It is one thing we can do to make sure that no employer is penalized for any layoffs during the pandemic. To me, that's a no-brainer. And I hope that everyone supports that. However, like you said, it's a difficult, it's going to be difficult to get out of Table F and that higher tax rate for our employers if we are, if there's not some influx to fill that gap that is created by that experience rating charge waiver. It's about, it's over $1 million. It's creating over $1 million gap for 2 years in a row in our trust fund. So again, I will say, I hope and I believe that the federal government is going to do the right thing. When I say we've been fiscally responsible, we're one of only a handful of states that have not actually pulled from Treasury and borrowed from Treasury for our trust fund yet. We have approximately $16 million left in our trust fund right now. We have made the authorization request, so we have it at our in our account when and if we need it. We don't pay interest. The Continued Act extended the waiver on interest payments through March. So we would never pay interest on anything that we don't actually pull and use for our trust fund. We have no interest payments until March, but after March, if that's not extended, and by March, we absolutely will need to borrow funding. Probably in the next few weeks, we'll need to borrow funding because, like I said, we have about 16 million balance right now, and we're spending more than that, as weeks go by.
So Secretary, what is that gap that's forcing us to go to Table F?
I don't have the chart right in front of me, Senator, but I can tell you it's so.
I mean, is it $100 million? Is it 400 million? Is it 10 million?
It's 500. It's between 5 and 600 million to come back from Table F up one table to Table D. So we're talking about a lot of money. I think the calculation happens every September 30th. So my goal is to think outside the box, be innovative, work with you, work with our federal government, and do everything in my power to have an infusion of funding into our trust fund by September 30th when that calculation is taken from USDOL.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have Senator Eckert, then Delegate Sample Hughes, and then Delegate Jacobs. Senator Eckert.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Secretary Robinson. Thank you for all that you've done. You certainly have been very comprehensive in your analysis, your organization, and your delivery of services. I just had one question. Last night at 7 o'clock, I was getting calls in here to the office, and we have difficulty with those people who are out of funds completely. And I don't know if there's any criteria by which we can identify what are the most emergent cases that come to our attention. We've been sending them over to the resources you've provided, but we never know what's happening. Is there some other way we should deal with that? You know, it's daily. And as you said, there's a spike again. And so people in our office worry that folks are homeless. They have had no income since April and are pretty desperate. Any other suggestions?
Understood. The only thing I can tell you is, well, first, I hope you have the links and contacts for all the additional resources that we also continue to push out from our other agencies and local agencies that can provide help for some of those other issues. But in terms of the urgent cases, and I will remind you that if everything is urgent, then nothing is urgent in a time of volume like this. But for your urgent cases, please do continue to send those directly to Michael Harrison. And the reason is that I mentioned I'm doing a little bit of restructuring. That is a list, the urgent cases that come from your offices that we funnel through Salesforce. That is a specific list that I'm targeting. So we hope to get those specific cases, someone reaching out to them. My directive last week was within 2 to 4 days, they must have contact by an agent. And the team, the holistic team of people I have working on this will be working to fully resolve the issue for them. Now, that being said, I can't promise every issue gets resolved. The hardest part of my job is having to deny benefits to someone who's in a desperate situation, but is simply not eligible for the program. And I dealt with a constituent last night who just couldn't understand, you know, why his benefits had stopped, and he actually received an overpayment. And after multiple calls and research and figuring it out, his own accountant had reported wages all through the summer for him because his business received a large PPP loan and he was getting paid that whole time. That under the law right now triggered an overpayment. But it took 3 different people, you know, to dive in and get a hold of the employer, who had to talk to the accountants to find out what was reported, because the employee had not reported any of those wages to our department. You know, I talked to another one from Congressman Brown's office this week, who was insistent that a claimant was going to be homeless, and there were major issues with the claimant. It rose to the level of being urgent, and it turns out that the claimant was incarcerated and not eligible for benefits. So it's all over the place. And we are attacking those urgent cases because we know we need to get to the customers that truly need the benefits and are eligible for the benefits. So we're going to attack those first. And honestly, as I mentioned, we have a task force, and I literally have it called a legislative task force internally to try and make faster progress on these claims for you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. We've been sending them over to Michael, and like you said, people don't always give you all the information, and sometimes we don't know. And even if we do ask, we can't do anything with it. So, you know, it's just a matter of shifting them over to somebody else. But thank you very much for.
Sure. I wanted to follow up. I asked for everyone to send everything to Michael. And the reason is, I think by now you guys all know my team pretty well. Andrew Fulginiti, my legislative director, had his first child on Monday. He had a little baby girl. So we're letting him take a couple days off. But he's going to be monitoring and back in the system very soon. And we have others assisting Michael and the legislative and policy team to ensure that all of your constituents are assisted.
Great.
Thank you. Can we move to delegate sample use, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary, for being here today. I did have a few things. Those are my questions regarding logistics and some questions. Back in November, December, actually, I sent you a couple of emails because I heard specifically from the workers there in Salisbury Unemployment Office wanting and being concerned about the fact they weren't trained on the beacon system. And so they were just idly sitting in their offices and not able to help the many constituents that were contacting them. So I was trying to get some level of response from you at that time. What I also want to understand, the 150 adjudicators, are they the ones who are responsible for doing the 2 to 3 minute interview, the initial interview that is supposed to happen happen, or is that the traditional staff? The two other things that I'll raise, if you could respond to, is that the call center number that continuously hangs up on people and is not getting them anywhere. My staff, tried just along with the citizen to no avail, no response, as well as the news station just the other night. Last thing, we have a company in Salisbury, it's actually an accounting firm, but they got a letter stating that they were fraudulent and doing fraudulent activity. So I just trying to help and figure out how to help, but I feel like I can't get any responses from you or your office on these issues. So any assistance you can provide would be greatly appreciated.
Sure. Let me try to remember your questions and answer them all for you. And if I ever missed a direct email, I do apologize for that. My number and email have also been blasted on Facebook. So I get hundreds and hundreds of, some days thousands of constituent emails as well. And we try very hard to stay on top of that, but I would be remiss if I didn't say I'm sure I missed a few here and there. So I apologize for that. I think you first mentioned training in Beacon. I had my assistant secretary for unemployment insurance talk with all staff after we heard a couple employees, and I believe that they were coming from Salisbury complaining that they didn't have adequate training. I just want to be really clear and open and honest that every single unemployment insurance employee in our department began their training on the Beacon system last summer. No, I was saying that last fall, in the summer of 2019. Remember, this was a 5-year project. Every employee was involved along the way. There were multiple training sessions leading into the launch. There were not only morning and early morning before hours, because we needed to use the majority of our hours for serving our customers, but there were options for early morning trainings, late evening trainings, weekend trainings, and there was a sandbox environment where every employee was asked to test and work through sample claims. We had liaisons from the leadership team and my UI team working with employees. So I don't believe that many of those statements were accurate. And for anyone who didn't avail themselves of the trainings that were available, we were sorry that happened. But we actually continue training because we have so many new employees onboarding. So every single member of our staff has the opportunity to join in on all the almost daily, absolute weekly new trainings on full parts of the system and individual portions of the system. I think the other thing you asked me about who was adjudicating, the vendor, the 150 staff through Alorica that we have on board and we continue to add through that vendor is augmenting our internal staff. Adjudication is the hardest part of the unemployment insurance system. It requires either legal or investigative types of education and experience to be able to do the work. It also requires customer service skills because they oftentimes are the ones talking with multiple employers in a base period, making sure that we charge the right employer or get the facts straight from each member that might be disputing the claim, and get in touch with the employee. Part of the way through this pandemic, we were having a lot of trouble reaching claimants and reaching employers. We've resolved a lot of that, and our employer phone line has helped with that. But it's both sides of the house that is doing those adjudications. You asked about phones hanging up. We are receiving anywhere from, depending on the day, 20 to 40,000 calls in our call center every single day. I mentioned that I have 675 agents currently, and we continue to add. Remember, I'm adding as quickly as the vendor can recruit and train, and we can provide internal resources to support. As you can imagine, 40,000 calls that all come with complex problems trying to be answered by 675 people. That's a disconnect. I absolutely do not have enough resources to answer every single call. So people can wait. There are so many lines, 540 lines. People can wait in a queue if they're not on the phone. And if there are more people calling than are on the phone lines, and on hold in the queue, they get a message that says, please call back later, and the phone hangs up. I wish there was a better way. I've worked with our phone vendor. I've worked with Do It. I continue to try and solve that problem. Right now, I'm doing it by continuing to add staff. And forgive me, I forgot your last question. I think there was one more point.
We had a accounting firm in Salisbury that had received a letter from your agency saying that they were engaged in fraudulent activity as it relates to unemployment. I just want to help them get that resolved. So I wanted to get clarity on where to send that and reiterate the fact that, we still are getting calls from people who have not had anything since April. So that's still at the forefront of our staff daily responsibility and daily calls.
Sure, understood. So please do send that accounting firm's information directly to Michael. Feel free to copy me. We will get that taken care of today. Fraud is rampant. I obviously can't tell you what's happening there without looking into the specifics of the case. More often than not, I'm hearing from employers who are getting notices that an unemployment insurance claim has been filed in the name of their name, the owner, or one of their employees, when in fact they're still working. So we know it's fraudulent, and we have to go in and block that and flag it and do that investigation immediately. So we will get to the bottom of that one. As to the constituents calling, I can't tell you how many claimants I've dealt with through my team just in the past week or two who have claimed that they filed and haven't had their claim resolved since April or May or what might be. And in every single instance that has been the allegation, it has not been true. They have received benefits for many, many months, and they want to backdate to a week in April or March, or something triggered, and they feel like they're missing a week from that time. We have very, very few claims left that filed in those early months that have not been addressed. So we will certainly address them as they come through Salesforce.
Thank you for your time. And please know our federal partners are on the line today, so they're willing to assist and be available for questions.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
For the next few questions, we're running close to our time limit here, but I think I have Delegate Jay Jacobs, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Secretary Robinson, I appreciate you taking the time to be with us this morning and answering a lot of good questions, a lot of new information that was helpful for me. This is really a disaster, the whole thing, and I think it's been pointed out today that it's just tough on everybody. But our offices and our staff are getting a lot of calls, and the backlog seems to be part of the problem, where we get multiple calls from people that haven't had, I guess, haven't gotten any kind of answer for quite some time. So is there any kind of average time that you would say is on these unresolved cases, so that our staff would have an idea, rather than keep getting a call every week where we have to resubmit, or maybe they should be on a separate list? I don't know, but I know that all of us are facing that problem, where we get the ones that just, I guess, are unresolved cases, and they just keep calling and calling and calling.
Understood. And we know that, especially if a claimant is waiting for a fact-finding interview, and they're in that group of 40-some thousand claims that have disputes from one or more employers, we know that they are given that update. And then if they don't hear from anybody within a few days or a week, they're going to circle back and call you again if they can't get through to us. That is exactly why I'm putting additional agents on your constituent claims to try and get those fact-finding interviews completed. I would like to give you a timeline. I'm hesitant to do that publicly, because we literally kind of just pulled this task force together. I can promise you I have given timelines and directives internally to my team, but I would prefer to ensure that we can meet those deadlines. And it will not be months. I'm trying to get all of these issues and claims resolved in weeks. And again, have a claims agent who serves as a case manager, reaching out to the customer, which I think is one of the most important pieces that we've been missing. And we just haven't had the capacity to do that with every single customer due to the volume. But I think if I can try to do that for your team and share the information of what's happening behind the scenes in our process, it will be helpful, and it might prevent them from continuing to circle back to your office. So I will commit to report back to you with the timeline if you can give me a week or two to see how this works.
Well, that's very helpful. And I just want, I'm sure you don't need to hear this, but there's just part of the problems that we are continually having. And, you know, it's part of our constituent services. It's a tough time for everyone. You know, it's not easy, and I appreciate everything that you've done and are trying to do. And you don't need to hear a whole lot of redundant comments about, you know, where we are, but that seems to be one of the bigger issues that the staff is having to deal with. So I appreciate all your help again. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Delegate Jacobs. Delegate Mouts, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be really quick. Secretary, thank you for being here. And I want to share my appreciation for all that you're doing along with all the comments that have been made today. I just wanted to clarify, you mentioned earlier that if we have an urgent situation to contact Michael Harrison. I'm doing a lot of my virtual legislating from the shore, and I don't leave the house without being confronted with someone about an unemployment issue. I even have people coming to my home begging for help. And I just want to make sure that if we send something to, I mean, they're literally knocking on my door begging for help. And I want to make sure when I'm talking to them that I'm giving them the straight answer. I have no problem saying, listen, you know, I'm doing all that I can do, but I can't do anything. But you're saying if we contact Michael that they're going to be contacted, you know, like in 4 days. Was that accurate, or should I just say?
I would simply ask, that's my goal, but I would simply ask you to be selective in what you hear is an urgent case, because we have over 800,000 customers right now. So again, if everything coming through the door is urgent, we will not be able to get to them that quickly. But when you have a situation that you believe is desperate, in terms of, you know, someone losing their home, or if they have a disability and there's a problem, you know, accessing the system, or anything that requires our immediate attention, I trust that you will use your discretion to send that to us so that we can prioritize it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You know, Madam Secretary, I just have I know we're stretching you here, but I have a real quick question for you. I think it may take you time though. I'm having trouble with people asking me questions about the correlation between the unemployment rate and the massive unemployment issues.
Sure. You know, I wish I had our workforce division data analyst online who works on all the jobs reports, because he could probably explain this better than I do. But there is a little bit of a disconnect, simply because you may remember early in the pandemic, the Department of Labor waived or relaxed almost every rule and regulation that we had the authority to do to help our customers. And one of those relaxed requirements was the requirement to be searching for work. In the regular program, under state and federal law, claimants are required to submit proof to us through our system that they have searched for or made contact with at least 3 employers per week, that they are trying to find work in order to be eligible for benefits. Those requirements are waived right now during the pandemic. And that decision was made because the labor market was in a difficult place and jobs were hard to find. We internally are doing something a little bit different about that. We have conducted hundreds and hundreds of virtual job fairs. We're doing everything in our power to connect our customers with the many jobs that are available. But that being said, for all claimants that are not actively searching for work, they are not counted as part of the workforce, the labor market. So those numbers don't get calculated in the unemployment rate. That's based on the people that are out of work and looking for work. If someone is essentially labeled to be not looking for work, they're not included in those numbers. That's part of the disconnect. I'm not sure I explained it perfectly, but I can certainly follow up with you with some details about that from my data analyst.
All right, thank you very much. Listen, I do appreciate you taking the extended time here because typically we had you for a very shorter period, but I want to thank you and I want to tell you, I think we all appreciate the work you all have been doing. And, you know, I appreciate all the calls you get on. It's amazing. You're probably the most dedicated I've ever seen, but thank you very much for your time. Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. At this time, I think we are running a little late, but I wanted to give our federal partners just a quick minute to comment if we could. I have Mike Arntz from Congressman Harris's office. Go ahead, Mike. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Yeah, just a couple quick comments. Just wanted to make sure everyone, first of all, I want to thank you, Chairman Arntz, and both of the secretaries that were on this morning, great presentations, and found a lot of the information, particularly regarding unemployment issues, to be very interesting and important to be able to explain to people. We do get that is one area where we get a tremendous amount of phone calls from constituents. We tend to refer them off to their local delegates and senators. And I want to compliment all the staffs that you all have for the work that you're doing. I know it's a crazy time. Couple of points from a federal standpoint. Just wanted to mention that there's an application opening on Monday for fire prevention and safety grants through FEMA. That application process closes on February 26th. So, you know, important to make those applications in that time frame. Delegate Arntz, perhaps maybe I can send you the information and you can distribute it to the list that's on this call.
Be happy.
And just also wanted to point out that your constituents who may be calling about their stimulus checks, if they haven't received them, to point out that they will have the ability to claim those non-paid checks or non-received checks on their tax returns. So essentially what that's doing is increasing the amount of any refund that they would be getting. That's how it ends up being returned to them. And the only other thing I would mention regarding the legislation that you guys may be potentially working on or talking to the governor about would be the issue that we get a lot of calls from landlords who are struggling to pay their mortgages. And it seems like we put the moratorium on rent and assistance to renters, but need some of the maybe direct some federal money or some state money to possibly help landlords out. And that's all I've got.
Thank you. Appreciate that. How about Melissa or Kim? Anything from you all, from Van Hollen and Senator Cardin?
I think, oh, sorry, go ahead, Melissa.
I was just going to say Mike did a great job of summarizing recent activities. I think I mentioned last week that yesterday was the first day that bills could be reintroduced into the legislature. So we'll see some of that happening. I did hear, and we have heard numerous issues with the Postal Service. You should know that your entire delegation has already reached out to try and advocate for whatever we can to improve that. So those are kind of the big issues. And I would like to thank you for having the secretaries on. We do have a weekly delegation call with the Department of Labor, all of the agencies actually. Our office is fielding about 2,000 unemployment cases, and it has occupied most of our caseworkers. We pulled them off of other casework. We do not deflect it to your offices. We are managing those with great difficulty as well. So thank you for that information. And hopefully you can forward those slide presentations to us, Steve. That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, we will make that available to you. If you request it, I'm not just going to send it out broadcast,
Sure.
but we'll make it available.
Thank you.
I don't have much to add. Just thank you, Melissa and Mike, for the summaries that I would just reiterate, in addition to the U.S. Postal Service that we are getting and that is being worked on, is thank you to the secretary for being here. I know she's in regular contact with our offices. My concern that we've talked about is the ones that we are sending up are emergencies, and just the fact that hoping that it can be, if they are emergencies, if those people can at least get a call that says we're working on it, just a touch, so that they know. Because when they are so desperate, it's difficult to not hear for some time. So that would be my only thing. But appreciate all that you're doing, and thank you for both of these updates.
I know we're running really close here, but I think Senator Carrozza just raised her hand. Would you go ahead?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I will be brief. I just wanted to remind the Lower Shore delegation, if their constituents are interested, there is a COVID-19 vaccine distribution town hall set for this Monday, virtual. It's hosted by Atlantic General Hospital, Tidal Health, and our local health departments in Worcester and Wycomico and Somerset counties. And I'll have a post, and I believe some of our delegation members might have already received something from Chris Hall, but it might be helpful to constituents. My understanding is that the panelists will present information and updates about vaccine distribution. If it's anything like what we're receiving in my office, and I'm assuming with my other colleagues, obviously our constituents have a lot of questions about when they can be vaccinated, and this should provide some good information. And I just wanted to make sure my colleagues, especially on the Lower Shore, were aware of this Zoom town hall on Monday.
All right, thank you. I think we're about done here, but I just want to give a quick thing here. If people in the audience would like to have a question at some point, we don't typically entertain that. You can get that to us because you know the subject matter when we send out the agenda. And maybe next week we'll give a little bit of time for introductions out in the audience, but I know a lot of people are cutting off right now to get to other meetings because this one ran a little longer. But want to thank everybody for being here. Appreciate the time, and we will speak to you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Good night. Goodbye.
Thank you, Chairman Steve.